Let me ask you, because you and your wife are raising a family in North Carolina, which has such an amazingly rich, yet very complex American history. And, I was wondering if you could reflect a little bit now on, what's it like to raise a family given this backdrop and how important and high stakes of a time it is right now to both celebrate our diversity, but also think about different movements that are out there like Black Lives Matter?
Well, I'll start at the beginning. My dad came to this country in 1961, the day that John F. Kennedy was inaugurated. My dad got off a boat that day in Wilmington, North Carolina. And, it's interesting, the American dream story that a lot of us tell, is similar for my dad. $7 in his pocket, didn't know a single person, was on his way to study here in America. And, 50 years later, more than 50 years later, he's laid the foundation for a fantastic life for me and my sisters. But after the killing of George Floyd and reflecting on different parts of my identity, I've started to think about different angles to that story. My dad also told me another piece of that story, which never really resonated until more recently. When he got off the boat in Wilmington, he was going to go use the restroom. But for the first time in his life, he saw the restroom segregated by color, white and black. And, being a guy from India, 20 years old, he didn't really know which bathroom he was supposed to go into. He hadn't identified as one of those categories. And so he asked the woman behind the counter, which bathroom he should go to. And I think a lot about the answer to the question that she gave him and how it impacts the way people perceive you. So many of our stories are precipitated on the idea that we came here and did it all on our own without thinking about the other aspect, which is how people treat us and how they see us. That woman that day in North Carolina told my dad to go to the whites bathroom. And I think a lot about that in terms of the success that so many of us have had in this country and the opportunities we've been able to avail to ourselves. And it is based, yes, on the hard work that we learn around the kitchen table, but it's also based on kind of how society views us and the categories we fit into. And no American dream story that I tell or any other immigrant tells would be complete without also recognizing that there were people in Wilmington that day who'd been in this country for generations, who never had the chance to do the things that my family has had in one generation. And so I think the legacy of our story is trying to make sure that we expand opportunity, not just to people who are new arrivals, but to the people who have been here for a long time. And to me, this moment we're living in, after the killing of George Floyd and all the discussions around the country, that's how it's led me to reflect on my own identity. For my kids, I always thought of it that, growing up here to an American-born dad and American-born mom, they feel 200% American. I felt 100% American. My parents spoke with an accent. They were new to the country. They were navigating the system, but I always felt 100% American. But of course, when you have parents from another country, even after they've long become U.S. citizens and all that, you always see that pull between the old and the new. My kids, I thought, well, they shouldn't really have any of that, right? Their parents are as all America as can be. But so much changed in this country during the time that we've had kids. And a lot of it, in the last 4 years, but even before that, where you hear things and you hear even from leadership, things that I never thought I'd hear. And the validation of kinds of ideas that I thought we had really moved on beyond. I mean, if you think about, there was a rally in Greenville, North Carolina, where some of the crowd was chanting, send them back, send them back, send them back. I never thought I'd hear anything like that. And I never thought my kids would hear anything like that. And so while I think they will end up being 200% American, I also think they're going to grow up conscious of their identity in a much different way than I imagined. But it's actually one of the reasons I wanted to run for office, because I feel like putting a different narrative out there of what the immigrant and son and daughter of immigrant story is, showing people the contributions that we've made to this country and we can make when we work together, that's going to also create an environment for my kids that lives up to the potential that I once hoped for.